another episode of Your Right to Know, brought to you by the Fitchburg Republican City Committee. My name is Andrew Couture, and with me, as always, is my co-host, Mary Lotze. And today we have a very special guest, Kevin O'Connor. We want to welcome you to Your Right to Know. You are the Republican candidate for Massachusetts for the U.S. Senate, and the election will take place on November 3rd. There will also be voting as well for this national presidential election from approximately October 17th through October 30th. Kevin, please introduce yourself to the audience and give us some biographical information about yourself as why you're running for the seat.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me. And just so everyone knows, I have a primary too on September 1st, so please vote in the Republican primary. So I'm a father of 4 kids. I'm married. I am not a career politician. I've been a lawyer for the last 30 years, and I'm a trial lawyer for businesses. So I have a lot of experience with how the laws and regulations really weigh upon small business. I understand the Constitution and the importance of our constitutional liberties. And I'm running because I'm really sick of what the career politicians are doing in terms of just the politics of polarization. And my slogan is basically results, not resistance. What we've seen from the career politicians, particularly the 2 Democrats who are both in Congress and are seeking the Senate seat, is just complete efforts to obstruct in Washington and to posture rather than to get things done for the people of Massachusetts. And as a father of 4 kids and a proud American, I think that's completely wrong. And so I looked around and thought, is this the best we can do? The answer is absolutely not. And so I put my hat in the ring.
Now, being on the I've been on the campaign trail myself personally, and I've also helped friends of mine, Senator Dean Tran, as well as Mr. Fossa, who's running for the state rep seat. I've heard repeatedly on the campaign trail that this is the most crucial election of our time. Do you believe that's the case, that the 2020 presidential election is pivotal? And this is a 2-part question. First, why? And then running for the position of U.S. Senate, how do you see the importance of the seat in the totality of the 2020 presidential election?
I think it is the most important election in history, or at least in my lifetime. And they're all important, and there have been others that have been real forks in the road. But this is the biggest fork in the road ever. The delegation from Massachusetts, the Democratic congressional delegation, is the most extreme congressional delegation in the history of the United States. It really is far out there, and my 2 Democrat opponents are running really on a Democrat socialist or that Bernie Sanders AOC agenda. That's where all the energy and all of the ideas within the Democratic Party come from. And the Democratic Party has gone from the party of JFK to the party of AOC. And that's a very big fork in the road now for the American people and for the people of Massachusetts. So I'm running on defending the police, not defunding the police. I'm running against socialized medicine and Medicare for all, which would ruin our health care in Massachusetts and bankrupt our economy, as even Joe Biden says. And I'm running on a pro-growth opposition to the $4 trillion tax increase that Joe Biden wants to impose upon us and my Democrat opponents want to impose upon us. And then just basic liberty. And I don't think the choice in terms of policy positions between the Democrat Senate candidates in Massachusetts and the Republican candidate has ever been more pronounced or more severe. And I would submit that my positions are rooted in pragmatism, common sense, and basic American values. And the Democrats are really running on an agenda that is either untested or, to the extent it's been tested, has been proven to be in other countries a disaster from an economic perspective and from a human rights perspective.
Very interesting. Oh, I'm sorry.
I just
Andrew.
had a quick follow-up question, Mary, if you may. Now, I agree with everything that you said. I would be remiss to my fans and to the viewers. Everybody knows I'm a pro 2A guy.
Yes.
What's your stance on the Second Amendment and the basic gun laws of Massachusetts?
Well, I support the Second Amendment. I support common sense gun laws. I really believe with all areas of law, including gun legislation, the notion that we have just arbitrary or subjective standards where just a bureaucrat, even if it's someone in a police department, just unilaterally is making decisions as to people's rights, that's wrong. We need very clear criteria for right to carry, things of that nature. And so I am pro Second Amendment. I've been endorsed by the Gun Owners Action League, and I'll be a strong supporter of Second Amendment rights. And in terms of most important time in history, I would note that we are running in an election where the Democrats are advocating defunding of the police. So the most basic obligation and right of a person is to defend him or herself and one's family. We saw that family in St. Louis that sought to defend itself, and they were vilified. So the police had completely abdicated on their responsibility. The family was under threat, and they've been arrested, and none of the rioters, none of the looters, none of the lawless people who placed them under threat have been arrested or charged at all. And that's a completely intolerable situation, and I'll be sure as a senator to do everything we can to correct that.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Kevin, just to sort of bring you up to date on our show, Andrew and I just finished the last 2 months where we actually had an open investigation of progressivism, progressives, what do their policies really stand for? So I think tonight what we're looking at is somebody who absolutely is the opposite of a progressive going up against your challenger, who is definitely will be a progressive candidate. So what I'd like to look at now is a little bit of the comparison and the contrast between. So when you started the campaign trail, when you decided you wanted to run, did you have any sort of formed ideas of what your platform would be and what the most important things that were on the minds of our voters in the state of Massachusetts would be? And now that you've been walking around, touring the state, meeting people, talking to them, have you changed what people are saying now is the priorities that they want? Have you had some different focuses?
I've had more specific focuses, I would say, than what I thought. I think the job of a senator is always to focus on community safety, making sure we have jobs, and protection of liberties. Those are the roles of the federal government. I think a senator should also be an advocate for Massachusetts and our communities and making sure that our state gets its fair share of federal dollars. So when I started, the defunding the police movement had not begun at all.
Right.
It never occurred to me that I would be able to focus and a voter's attention on the choice between whether it's Ed Markey or Joe Kennedy. They want to defund the police. They use the euphemism reimagining policing, and they vilify our police. If you watch any of their debates, and I've watched all 5, they can't find it within themselves to say a kind word about our cops and their families and the enormous sacrifice they make. Their effort to vilify the police and to scapegoat them is just totally unacceptable. And so the notion that the Democratic Party would turn on our police so ruthlessly and so recklessly never occurred to me when I started running. So that's been a change. In terms of the economy, I think the progressive Democrats have been signaling a long time that they want massive tax increases and they want massive regulation because they really don't favor the private economy. And to the extent they have an interest in the private economy. They want big corporations that will be compliant with their regulatory directives. So let me give you a classic example. If they want to mandate paid family leave for all companies, it's easier for them to impose that on Walmart than the corner store that's locally owned. And so to the extent the Democrats are comfortable with business, they're comfortable with big business. They don't like small business. And as Republicans, we love small business. We know that small business is the pathway to the middle class and to a better life for our children. And immigrants in wave upon wave throughout American history have built better lives for themselves when they came to America and built businesses. And non-immigrants, we all know that our local family-owned businesses and our corner shop and Main Street businesses are the backbone of our community.
Mm-hmm.
And so they don't like small business because small business can't follow all their regulations. They just want fewer companies that they can regulate more heavily. I view it as exactly, I think all economic experience tells us that the best innovation, the best ideas come from promotion of small business and entrepreneurship.
This kind of just goes into what we talked about over the last 2 months about the progressives, getting rid of authority, AKA defunding the police and people who have that responsibility in the economy. They do not like capitalism. They would prefer a socialistic environment. And so that's right where you're talking about.
And I talked to a friend of mine who was a regulatory lawyer in the financial services area. And it was very interesting. He said that the regulators would rather be regulating a few big banks because it makes their job easier and they can impose tons of regulations upon them. And those big banks have big compliance departments and all that. And they don't want little local banks because it's harder to regulate those banks. It makes the regulators' jobs harder and they receive more resistance to the imposition of greater regulation. So that's where the Democrats, they're oriented toward big business and redistribution. They are completely neglecting the middle class and they're neglecting the family-owned businesses and the hustlers and the entrepreneurs who make America great.
Kevin, how important is it to keep the Senate, as we are Republican right now, but it's very small margin. How important is it to keep the Senate in the Republican hands and even increase that number that we have, that majority number?
It's absolutely critical. The Senate is a brake on the progressive hard left agenda. What we're hearing from the Democrats is that they will eliminate the filibuster. Mm-hmm. So which is and Joe Biden, who lived on the filibuster for 40 plus years, Ed Markey, these are creatures of Congress who have always relied upon the filibuster, which has a good moderating effect on legislation. They want to get rid of that. They want, if they get all three branches of government, in the first 100 days, America will be radically altered. They will attempt to add Puerto Rico and Washington, D.C. as states, which will add four new senators who will all be Democrats. So the swamp will be a state. Imagine that. They'll radically alter our immigration laws to legalize 20 to 30 million people who are here illegally, which will massively burden our social welfare network and our treasury. We're already $26 trillion in debt, and they will heap $4 trillion of tax increases on the American economy, which will have a crippling effect, and pursue their grossly misguided Green New Deal agenda. So it will be, the Senate can stop all of that from happening, or certainly slow it down. And one thing I want to, if I could have a second, just in terms of pitching for Massachusetts, a lot of people look and they see what are called the contested seats, and Massachusetts is viewed as a safely blue seat. And I think that's really the wrong way to look about it. In Massachusetts, statewide candidates at the gubernatorial level, Republicans have won 5 of the last 6 elections, and Senator Brown did win. So we can win this state. We can absolutely win this state. And Republicans win when the Democrats go too far to the left. This is the most extreme left-wing agenda ever from the Democrats. Republicans win when the Democrats are divided in Massachusetts. We have a bloodbath of a primary on the Democratic side, which will weaken the winner. And Republicans win when they're united and offering common sense ideas. And we have that. And if the Republican Party can go on offense in Massachusetts, not just defend Senate seats, but go on offense, that will have a great national effect for Republican ticket top to bottom.
That leads me to my next question, Kevin. You took on the job of going after uber liberal politician Ed Markey, all right? And then we actually have somebody else even further on the left. Now Kennedy is joining in, trying to take him out. And let's face it, the only thing going for him is his family name. Basically, I look at the two of them. You know, you have the old Democrats with Markey, and then you have the new AOC Democrats with Kennedy. Now, have you developed similar strategies to run against the candidate, Democrat candidate, because they are so progressive and similar? Let's face it, there's not much dividing them. What's your tactical approach to campaigning against them? Was it pretty much the same?
It is pretty much the same. If you look at them from a policy perspective, they are both AOC Democrats. And so one's younger than the other, and one is more of a flip-flopper than the other. So I think Kennedy's been weaker, a little bit more of a flip-flopper, but he votes with AOC 97% of the time, I believe, according to ProPublica. And Markey is a co-sponsor of the Green New Deal. So they're both really extremists, left progressive extremists. And so either way, I'll be running on results, not resistance, common sense. We need community safety. We need to promote jobs and better wages for the middle class and constitutional liberties. So it's a pretty simple set of issues that we're running on. And really, and any one issue that you look at gives us visibility into their whole mindset. The people who want to defund the police, anyone that would be so misguided, or anyone who wants to legalize prostitution the way Joe Kennedy and Ed Markey want to, they don't have good judgment. And you can look at any issue, no matter how arcane, and you'll see the same level of impracticality and poor judgment. Every single issue, I would say.
Now, another question that I have, Kevin, about the campaign. COVID-19 has basically turned the world on its head, let's face it. And social distancing and gatherings, although I think I call it the election of infection. Everything will be over after November 3rd. But how have these challenges we've talked with other candidates, many candidates, who have found these changes challenging and have to be creative when it comes to working with voters to get their message out. What have you found in campaigning, and how successful has your campaign been in reaching people outside of your base?
It absolutely has created challenges. It's created challenges for everybody, unless you were a remote worker to start with. So we experienced the same things, but I think we've done a pretty good job of adapting. At the beginning of the campaign, we had to get 10,000 signatures in order to get on the ballot. And in Massachusetts, they require you to have ink signatures. So you can't even get electronic signatures to do that. And that requirement, there's a limited time in which you have to do it. The window is from late February until the first week of May.
And that's basically when the COVID hit. That's when
when
the
the COVID hit. And my mom was my most prolific signature gatherer. My dad came down with COVID and almost died of it. He's 86 years old. And I wrote the legislature a letter and asked them to, in the interest of public safety and democracy, to modify the requirements for this year. And they totally ignored me. I didn't get even the courtesy of a response. So I teamed up with 2 Democrats, and we brought an emergency class action before the Supreme Judicial Court to declare the legislature's failure to act a violation of the US Constitution and the Massachusetts Constitution. And we won. The court struck down the requirement, cut it in half, and allowed electronic signatures for the first time in Massachusetts history. And as a result of that, I think there are 5 additional Republican congressional candidates who are on the ballot now, and 40 candidates who have acknowledged that, but for that, us winning that case, they wouldn't be on the ballot. So we've adapted. That's an example of how we've adapted. It's also an example of how I'll work with anyone who will help the people in Massachusetts. I teamed up with 2 Democrats because that was the right thing to do. It was common sense. We tried to get the legislature to cooperate with us, but then when they wouldn't, we brought the force. And that's what I'll do as a senator. I'll try to work with people, but if we need to take it to the people or take it to the courts or take it to a vote, I'll do it every time, and I'll do it with fire in my belly.
Phenomenal job, Counselor.
Thank you, sir. You've done okay yourself.
Yeah, I guess I got a couple wins under my belt.
Yeah, pretty impressive.
Kevin, we're down to really just like 3.5 minutes left, and I want to give you a minute at the end to face the viewers and tell them why they should vote for you. So with that in mind, a 3-minute timetable, I'd like to just ask the last question that we were talking about before we went online. And actually, Andrew, I'm taking away your last question.
All right.
What I'd like to know is, do you believe that in Massachusetts, the momentum of President Donald Trump, which you and I have seen so much of, as I've been out, you've been out, we've been working with our candidates, and we've just seen this tremendous momentum for President Trump. Do you think this will help you in this year become elected in such a blue state?
Yes, I do. I believe that the president's agenda is in line with what the American people want. I think all the energy is with the Republican side and with the president's people. And whether he wins Massachusetts or not, I don't know. I think it's going to be a lot closer than people think, and I'm optimistic. But that undercurrent, the energy that he's brought, and the issues that he's brought to the table are the winning issues in Massachusetts, and I think they're going to help me get across the finish line successfully. I firmly believe we're going to win this election.
That sounds good. We're here for you.
Thank you.
So I'd like you to take the less than 2 minutes and tell viewers why vote for you, why it is important that they go to the ballot box. We're in the middle of early election right now. Election day is this coming Tuesday, and vote for you.
So primary day is September 1st, and I need to win the Republican primary. So please do vote for me on or before September 1st. The most important job of a senator is to deliver for the people of Massachusetts. It is not to go off to Washington and fight on abstract issues. It's to make sure our communities are safe, that we have good jobs, that our wages are growing, and that our liberties are protected. And I will be totally focused on those issues. I'll be back every weekend. I am a tireless worker. I'm a fighter. I've been a litigator for 30 years. I know how to bring a case and to make it clear. And I love the competition. So I'll be competing to focus on my clients, who will be the people of Massachusetts, us. And I'll be totally focused on delivering for our communities and protecting us in the face of some pretty difficult challenges.
You mean when you become a senator, you're not going to move your home to Chevy Chase, Maryland?
Yes, I think we need to give the third senator from Maryland his walking papers, and I will be a tireless and present advocate for the people of Massachusetts. You've seen it. I'll be out there all parts of the state. That's the job, and I'm really eager to do it.
That's wonderful. And thank you so much for being with us tonight and joining us on Your Right to Know. Andrew and I really appreciate it. And we'll see you along the campaign trail. I'm sure our paths will cross. So for us, the GOP stands for growth, opportunity, and prosperity for all people. And we always stand for freedom. And the final thing that I shared it last month, I think it's very good. It's easy to be a communist in a free society. Try being free in a communist society. And I think the message we heard from Kevin tonight speaks to that so well. I thank you so much, sir.
Oh, thank you. Great, great show. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
America, we stand for freedom. So let us all unite to yearn and strive for our republic that reflects our values, that preserves our rights, and goes forth in power and might, that reflects our values and preserves our rights, and goes forth in power